When I was younger, I decided I wanted to be a professional woodworker. So what did I do? I enrolled on a furniture making course, I learned from as many sources as possible, and then spent endless hours researching and practicing my craft. Therefore, it didn't take me long to come across this video.
Hi, I'm Rob Cosman, welcome to my shop.
This is Rob Cosman, one of the most popular woodworkers on YouTube, and he's also really quick at dovetailing. See ya! This is a skill level that I aspired to achieve and became one of my benchmarks for success ever since. Now, over the past few weeks, I've created multiple projects that include endless amounts of dovetails. Therefore, I believe that having this practice under my belt would make beating the record easy. What followed was a masterclass in having to unlearn skills I'd evolved over the years, plenty of injuries, and also calling on a few helpful substances too. This is my attempt at beating Rob Cosman's 3.5-minute dovetailing record that's remained unbeaten for 12 years. Firstly, we need to set the parameters of the challenge. Rob filmed this video in one take and didn't formally set it as a challenge. I guess he was too scared of being beat. So I took the time to gather as much information from his video as possible to ensure I was a fair contender. Firstly, he used pine, and seeing as pine is so soft, I figured using anything harder would be fair competition, which is most other woods. So there we go. Secondly, the boards were 5/8 of an inch thick by 4 inches wide. Now we used real measurements on this side of the pond, so I'm using the nearest metric equivalents of 15mm by 100mm. Thirdly, he used preset layout tools. I'm going to say this also includes the use of jigs such as dovetail alignment boards and such. As for the joint itself, he cut 3 tails with approximately a 1:6 ratio. The joints were unglued, and Rob said he was going for cabinet grade dovetails, which I'm going to say is gaps no more than 0.5mm, and the timer stopped when the joint was assembled. In order to tackle this, I'm going to break it down into streamlining 5 individual tasks as follows: layout, sawing, fret sawing, chiseling, transferring. These then repeat by cycling through sawing, fret sawing, and chiseling again. Once I've established the most efficient means of carrying out these tasks, I'm then going to streamline the transitions between each of them to save myself a few extra seconds here and there. Now, not only do I plan on obliterating Rob's record, but I plan on doing it with his own saw too. Thanks for the free saw, Rob. In order to practice and identify sticking points in my process, I prepared a bunch of sycamore to practice on. The first step to practice was layout. Now, Rob used preset marking gauges for this and took 16 seconds to mark the tails and the pins. When I watched this originally, I thought it was quite slow and reckoned I could do better. Right, I've shaved 6 seconds off already. After the gauge lines were marked, Rob used dividers to lay out the tails. Now don't get me wrong, this was quick and all that, but I have a much better method. A stick. Well, more specifically, a story stick. Long story short, the story stick acts as a template to copy dimensions across to the workpiece, which is great and all that, but it actually ended up being quite fiddly to get into position. Therefore, I had to build it into a cradle that would lock it into place. I did also consider adding small blocks to the top that would allow me to mark the spacing and square across the end grain in one swift move, but I didn't want to bend the rules too much. So I opted to square across the end grain in the traditional way. For Rob to get to this stage, it took 38 seconds. You'll see at the end of the video how long it took me. Next step. Rob approaches sawing the same way I do, which is tilting the saw to match the dovetail pitch instead of tilting the wood to match the pitch. For speed, the former is better, but purists will often say tilting the wood is better as it enforces your ability to cut plumb. Good thing we're going for speed and bragging rights as opposed to employing proper form. I had a few issues with this stage, not necessarily with the sawing itself, but clamping the workpiece accurately in the vise. Sometimes it would lock high, sometimes low, sometimes tilted left, right, sometimes I'd miss completely. To make it more consistent, I clamped a piece of material in the vise that would seat the component in exactly the same place each time. It worked spectacularly. I also copied Rob's technique of using a well-placed light source to cast a shadow on the line, therefore making it easier to see while in such a rush. The next step was removing the waste between the tails, which took Rob 6 seconds to complete. He used a 12.5 TPI blade for this, whereas I'm using a 13 TPI blade. The difference in cutting speed between these two is negligible, therefore the main tactic was to simply saw as fast as possible. Next step, chiseling. Fortunately, in the last step, I cut directly to the outer shoulder lines, meaning it was only between the tails that needed cleaning. Rob did this while it was still upright in the vise, whereas I prefer doing it vertically. While this is likely slower, I found the main issue was actually fumbling to find the chisel on the workbench and picking it up differently each time. To counteract this, I made a chisel holder out of a tool clip that would allow me to pick up the chisel in exactly the same position each time. I just had to train my muscle memory to withdraw it in the first place and then deposit it back accurately. Oops. The next step was to transfer the tails to the pins. This took Rob 17 seconds to complete, and he used a plane as a platform to support the template piece. I tried using a similar method, but the mad rush made the alignment very challenging. To aid this, I made an unconventional dovetail alignment guide. This worked in unison with the vertical stop I had fitted to my vise that would not only lock the component at the correct height, but also in line with the guide. By this point, the process of cutting and chiseling repeats with minor changes, so I started creating methods of streamlining the processes even further. I did this by rehearsing the entire process slowly, noticing where the remaining sticking points were, and fixed them one by one. This materialised in the form of cradles for my saws, allowing me to pick them up perfectly every time, specific placements for each tool on the bench to ensure I knew where to grab things from, and doubling up the tool clips on the chisel holder to allow me to fit a larger chisel for clearing the sockets. Eventually, I began having proper attempts at beating the record, only to fall short every single time. I was down to my last piece of material. It was now or never. My name's Matt Estlea, and I'm about to break the dovetailing world record. In 3, 2, 1. Go. Right, first we get the marking gauge. You mark the front and we mark the back. Then you flip it over, you do the front, you do the side, you do the back, and then you do the further. Then you get it up in the vise, you get the old marker thing like that, and then you space them out lovely and evenly, just like that. Then you get you get this one, and then you mark it out very carefully, square it across the end grain. Then you get your saw and you go across, going down to the line, just like that. Down and across, going down, down, and going down. Then we put that back, then we go down to here, then we go across the baseline, and it back, flip it on its side, then we mark straight down to the line here, going down, pop that back, spin this around, pop that back that way. And this saw get back, that goes up in the vise like that, this goes up behind it, okay, this goes on, that in lined up, okay, there, back and down to the lines, being very careful. Okay, now we go lightning speed across. Okay, I'm now chiseling. Final panic of the process. Power. Sorry, I forgot about that. Power and control. More power. Come on! Keep going. All right.
Power.
Yeah. Okay. Back. 4.
Going well.
That up and close. Spin that round and get all this out. Oh no, don't put the material in there. Flip that round.
Fine, take your time. Go on, please!
Yes! Yes!
Yes!
That's it.
254!
Yes! Wait. Deep it in the camera shot. Get in focus.
Get in focus.
Look at that! Oh,
Oh my god.
254!
You had so much
Oh.
time. I saw the time, I was
Oh.
like, don't whack it in too hard now.
Last attempt.
Jesus.
Oh, I am shaking.